So Judaism, we fulfill and we live today is not Judaism of the Bible. It is the Judaism of Talmud and post-biblical period. And I think the rabbis, the Talmudic rabbis, had a great sense of humor when they created the system of modern Judaism. Jewish calendar doesn't allow you to get bored. In autumn, there is a month with 4 major festivals, one after the other, followed by months with no festivals at all. There are days when Jewish people eat too much, and there are days when we do not eat or drink at all. There are festivals when you replace bread with tasteless dry matzah, and there is a festival, upcoming festival of Shavuot, when you are commanded to eat lots of cheese and cheesecake. So it's amusing that our tradition came up with the idea of studying all night on Shavuot and having the service the next morning. They even explained it in a very, I would say, funny way. According to the rabbis, we stay awake and study all night, literally, study all night on Shavuot, because all Jewish people, when they received the Torah on the Mount Sinai, they were asleep, according to the Midrash. So nobody cares about Torah then, so we must correct this injustice and show that our generation is better than the generation of Moses. This is why the night of study is called Tikkun Leil Shavuot. Tikkun, the word, like in Tikkun Olam, repairment of the world. The Shavuot night of correction, the Shavuot night of repair. Rabbis also had more serious questions and fascinating discussions about the Torah, receiving of the Torah, and Judaism. For example, one of the questions that occupied our sages was about the location of the giving of the Torah. Out of all places, why was Torah given in the middle of desert? Why not a beautiful city? Why not a garden or a forest? And that was the question our rabbis asked, very seriously. Why desert? So philosopher Philo explains that the Torah was given in the wilderness because cities are filled with corruption, luxury, and idolatry. He also argued that for one to be pure and ready to receive the Torah, one must be separated from all the vices of the city. So that's one interpretation. So in other words, if you want to start something new, if you want to renew a system, you must build it on a pure, clean, and strong foundation. You can't just do the visual, superficial redecoration. Sometimes you need to build it from scratch. To think out of the box, you need to be out of the box yourself. Babylonian Talmud in the tractate Nedarim explains that Torah was given in the desert to teach that to learn Torah, we must be open and ownerless like the desert. I think that the idea of becoming ownerless is one of the keys in understanding what it means to be Jewish today. Midrash expands on this topic and explains. Like the desert, the Torah is open and free, accessible to everyone. It's neither a secret doctrine nor an exclusive one. Anyone at any time is welcome to accept it and make it one's own. This, say the rabbis, explains why the Torah is given in no man's land. It's a gift to all human beings. The foundation of Judaism is not exclusivist or tribal. It belongs to everyone. To understand ourselves better, we need to open ourselves to others and to learn together with everyone, not just fellow Jewish people. Rabbi Mordechai Katz has a wonderful teaching about Torah and the wilderness. He writes, "Just as the desert contains nothing but layers of sand, so too the human body is composed of nothing but dust. But just as the desert was transformed into a holy place by the appearance of the divine presence, so too with human beings. They become a source of greatness only if they allow their spiritual spark to dominate their actions." Isn't it a wonderful teaching? People have the ability to transform the emptiest desert with nothing in it into an oasis, into a space full of life and meaning. And so it is with people. We have the ability to transform ourselves, our internal world, which sometimes is empty. But we can make it, we can fill it in with beauty and fruitfulness. It is the idea of an ownerless desert that caught my imagination and the imagination of many other teachers and scholars of the past. Ownerless, with no possessions, right? Remember, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger, a brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. First of all, don't worry, it is not a sermon about communism. This is a reflection on leadership. This is a reflection on life. In this week's Torah portion, we learn that Levites were excluded from the general census. Excluded. We also know from later on in Torah, from other places in the Torah, that Levites were not given their own piece of land. So when the land was distributed into different tribes of Israel, Levites were given nothing. What did they do? They were supposed to work in the tent of meeting, doing, as we just read, doing the work Lemishmeret Bnei Israel, for the service of all Israelites. So, an important note, that in ancient times, priests and all temple workers, like Levites, were not just religious leaders. In the past, religion was not separated from medicine or court system or some other systems. In the past, temples were also places to collect and store taxes, a place where people came with their health problems, and the place where people resolved their disputes as well. So in other words, it was in practice the place where all civil servants, doctors, judges, and other people who served the other people were placed. And what reward were they supposed to receive for their work, you may ask? Such a relevant question for today. How do we treat these people who serve our society? So how were they treated? That's civil servants of the past. How were they treated? Well, donations and tithe from the community. In other words, their livelihood and comfort were directly linked into a prosperity of the rest of the people. If people around them were prosperous and comfortable, priests and Levites would receive 10% of people's income. Now, let's do a little bit of math. They would receive 10%. So from this week's Torah portion, we know that there were 22,000 Levites out of the bit over 600,000 Israelites. So 22,000 out of 600,000 is about 3% of population. And the 3% of the population was supposed to receive 10% of the income. So they were supposed to live a lifestyle above the average of an average Israelite. And I think that's an important point. On the one hand, the prosperity of civil servants, judges, doctors, and others was directly linked into the prosperity of people. If you govern your country in a way that people live a good life, you too live a good life. If not, your level of living standards also decreased. On the other hand, they were well paid and yet independent and not too attached to material possessions. So I grew up in a country where at some point police officers, their salary was so low that some of them couldn't even pay bills, basic electricity and heating bills, on the salary of police officers. So what happened in the society, that police corruption and bribery, I'm talking about Russia in the 90s, in the 1990s. So police corruption and bribery were culturally acceptable and not condemned by society as a result. So the logic was the following. Everybody understood that you need to pay the police officer a bribe because they need to provide for their family. And some people even considered bribes as an act of kindness and charity, honestly. And which is such a wrong logic, but that happens because they were paid so little by their employees. Imagine a world in which you don't pay your judges and police officers and civil servants or even politicians enough. Can they really be independent this way? They are modern days Levites. They are doing the work lemishmeret bnei olam, for the service of all people. By the way, according to the Torah, they should be among those who live very comfortable and secure lifestyle, but at the same time, don't own any property at all. Perhaps this structure is not directly applicable to the modern world, but the principle, I think, can be relevant. All public servants should be in touch and connected with the rest of the society, but at the same time, they should have secure and comfortable lives in order to do their service to the society. The book of Numbers opens with a census of people and ends with a description of borders and distribution of the land to all Israelites. Perhaps this is a hint about the priorities every one of us should have. People first, land and property second, care and support for individuals first, and saving material things second. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I am not the only one. Shabbat Shalom.